Now, you know I love books, and you know there's something about Angie's book club. I was saying to a publisher earlier today, it just won't go away. So instead of fighting it, I am just going to embrace it, whether I am in the studio with somebody or in Hatchet with somebody or Jacaranda Books with somebody, or if I'm on Zoom. And tonight I'm on Zoom. I say tonight because it's 9 p.m. UK time. It's 1 o'clock in LA. And I've got the fabulous Tina Andrews with me. Tina, how you doing?
I'm just great, Angie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Tina, it had,
Yes.
it had to happen. There is no way on God's earth that I could let this one pass me by. It just couldn't. I just could not let this one pass me by. You've written a book about Queen Charlotte Sophia, who is the first Black Queen of England. And before we even move on with that, Whoopi Goldberg has said this novel may very well be telling the truth of England's first Black Queen. It's extraordinary and it's wonderful. So first of all, thank you, Whoopi Goldberg, because this is a story that needs to be told. Did she not hold this book up on The View and talk about this?
She did. She did it. It had another book cover. We are celebrating this year the 10-year anniversary of my telling of this story because I have been with this story. I would love to be able, here's what I'd like to say before people talk about that book. Long before Bridgerton, long before the Queen Charlotte prequel that came with that story, I have been researching and talking about Queen Charlotte. It was supposed to have been a follow-up, to my Sally Hemings project.
Yes.
I didn't know it was going to take me 8 years to write it and the back and forth trips to London, which is why I now have a place, in London. But yeah, I've been with this story a long time. It is a novel.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that there is a difference between a novel and a biography. It is not
Absolutely.
a biography. So let us start there. But what I'm known for doing is I'm the queen of connecting the dots.
Yeah.
I have to, as someone who writes, I have to know what the actual facts are.
Yeah.
Those become the dots. Now, in order to get from one piece of information or 1 year to another year, sometimes that's not clear. There's no history there. There's nothing there. And you have to then use your furtive imagination to connect them. Okay. And that's what I've done with this piece. And people have now been loving it for 10 years.
Okay. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of this.
Some people not, but yeah.
Come on now, we're living in a real world here. We're living in a real world. Okay.
That's right.
Before we get into the nuts and bolts of Queen Charlotte Sophia, I want to talk about you because you were in Days of Our Lives. This was the first multiracial relationship that was shown in a drama on TV. You were in Roots as Kunta Kinte's girlfriend. And that's heritage. So at some point, you must have sat down with Alex Haley, regardless of what people have said, whether it's true to life or not. Roots was historical.
It was. It was. And
that. Sorry, say that again.
Alex Haley became my literary mentor. Okay. Can you imagine? I was a young actress. I got a chance to play. It was a fictitious character, as was Chicken George. As was Fiddler, who was there to move the story along. But I would watch him do what he did and how he talked about how he did his research for Roots in order to find his family lineage and genealogy. And I remember watching him at 20th Century Fox on a sound stage, but a stage they built for a presentation. Yeah. And I said, I have to be able to do that. One day I want to stand up in front of people and talk about a piece of material that I have written and its journey. Lo and behold, these years later, here I am. This is the forum that I have, and that book has taken me to this, to this place. Before it, it was Sally Hemings, and now it is Queen Charlotte.
Okay.
I have a tendency to write controversially.
Yes, I know.
I do. I stick my toe into areas. I tend to travel on the road less traveled, but that is of interest to me because I think that we need to know who we are and what our contribution has been to history worldwide.
Okay. You also worked with Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee.
I've worked with they were also in Roots,
Yeah.
And so I didn't get a chance to have the relationship I would have loved to have had with the two of them because I was there for we only had the one day, at the same time. I have been lucky enough to work with some quite wonderful people.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Whoopi Goldberg earlier. I have her to thank for my first huge gig in Hollywood, which was Sister Act 2. I mean, she was the highest paid actress. And she said, I want a Black woman to come in and do this rewrite. And there I was, and we've been friends 30 years.
Okay. You're a writer, you're a producer, you're a director, you're an actress. And I just want to make sure that we document this in our conversation so that when people say, well, hang on, who is this woman writing about Queen Charlotte Sophia? There needs to be an understanding that you have heritage in this industry.
Yes, I have skin in the game. That's
correct. Right.
That's very
okay.
Yes.
One of your current projects is working with Chaka Khan, the I'm Every Woman musical. And this isn't just about someone who sang Sweet Thing or Tell Me Something Good or I Feel For You or Ain't Nobody. This is about a woman who has been up there, but she's also been down as well.
Yes.
Tell me about your relationship with Chaka Khan.
Oh my God, I love her. First of all, we are two women. I mean, imagine, I absolutely adore her. Imagine I get to tell the story of this singer who I was emulating when she was coming along. I was also, on the soap opera, and we knew of each other and each other's work. When I was not on television, I was dressing like her. So I had that child thing going on and the headband, and in those days, honey, I could rock the bare midriff. I was doing
Tina, you're still rocking. Tina, you are still rocking. Yeah.
I am. Well, I'm rocking something, that's for sure. For sure. But imagine that I got to do the story of this woman that I'd sort of come up along with, who is also from Chicago. Okay. Also from the south side of Chicago, where I'm from. And we're only 2 years apart in age, and we're the same height. We just bonded. It was, I mean, how, she's what, 5 feet, I'm 5 feet. We were actually sitting up, taking pictures of us next to each other, trying to figure out the centimeters. Oh no, I'm at least 2 centimeters taller than you. It was incredible. Her life story is incredible. And I had to do it. I had to do a warts and all story.
Yeah. And fingers crossed we get to see this story touring the UK, but it needs to be in the West End, because I think we need to see more than I Feel For You. We need to see more than Ain't Nobody. We need to understand what this woman's life is about.
I mean, even if we only deal with just the business part of it, what she went through, being talented enough to write material and then to have record labels pull her vocals off of what would have been another iconic song, which ended up being recorded as solo by Robert Palmer. And then they had the 4 girls in the background, and there's no Chaka visuals, no Chaka vocal.
Okay.
People do not know that story.
And I don't want to give too much away because we want people to see this musical.
Yeah, I want them to see the actual dramatization of that, yes.
When that part of the dramatization came up and Robert Palmer said to Chaka, I want you on this track, I'm flying you out. to sing backing on this track. And then the video comes out, no chucker. It's just these backing singers looking fly, looking fine, and playing guitar and playing drums and singing. And Chucker's like, hang on, where am I? Okay, let's leave that one there. Let's leave that one there. Let's leave
Okay. Come see it, guys. When it comes out, please come and see I'm Every Woman, the Shaka Khan music.
Okay.
When it happens.
Tina, you've written books before. They've become dramatizations. You've won awards because of your work. Why Queen Charlotte Sophia? A queen who ended up in England. Why Queen Charlotte Sophia?
I'll tell you, listen, I'm somebody who's always looking for that story that I don't know about, which means that a lot of other people don't know about. My father died and left me his library in Chicago in 1987. And in that library, listen, that's why you'll see there's tons of books behind me.
I see.
And another 1,000 of books in my place in London. He left a series of books written by one of our, meaning African-American historians, whose name was J.A. Rogers. One of those was called Race. It was a series of 3, Race and Sex. Volume 1, as you're opening the book, 3 pages in, a picture of a Black woman, obviously in royal garb. Well, it was a picture of a woman in royal garb who looked, a little ethnic. And the caption was, Charlotte Sophia, England's first, and the word that was used was Negro queen, which is not a pejorative for us here in America. It's a description like colored or that. And I said, wait, hold on. She was Black? It didn't matter. I don't care where in the history it was. I said, there was a Black queen, be she a queen consort or the sovereign. There was a woman of color sitting on a throne next to the king. I have to know who she was and what that was about.
Okay.
And as I went down that rabbit hole that would last me until today, I had to find out what that story was. And that's what took me on the journey. So when you say why not? If I wanted to know and could do a rendering of her, I was assuming that other people would want to read that. So that's why.
I'd heard about Queen Charlotte Sophia. I hadn't read her life. And my goodness, what a life. Now, was she German born? Or
yes.
Okay. So
yes, she was born in Mecklenburg-Strelitz. That was the duchy in which she was born. She was the 8th of 10 children born to the Grand Duke and Duchess, and she was recruited to become the Queen of England because every king, particularly every Georgian king sitting on the British throne, had a German consort. So George I, his wife was German. George II, his wife was German. George's father, who died, which is why he didn't become king, Frederick, his wife was German, and our King George. So he had to marry a German Protestant, and that was because, of course, England's at war. So they went headhunting for a wife to marry him. Doesn't matter whether it was love or any of that. They went out looking for the appropriate woman who would be queen material.
Okay.
For the newly crowned sovereign of England. She was found, came to England, could barely speak English, and that's the beginning of our story. Although I tell her backstory, but that's our story.
I got the impression from reading what I've managed to read from the book. She was married to George, but he wasn't her true love.
Well, he became. Okay, so let's understand, whether you read the book or not, you can get this from the historical record without doing the deep dive in research that I did. They ultimately fell in love and had a 60-year reign and marriage that brought forth 15 living children, 18 pregnancies, but 15 live children. They did fall in love ultimately, and it was one of those wonderful marriages, very tantamount to Victoria and Albert.
Yeah.
But she, as a 17-year-old, had this unbelievable crush, and we can't call it a relationship really, but there was this thing that she had with Johann Christian Bach,
Yes.
who was the brother of her music master. Yes. And he ultimately ends up in London and ends up in the palace. If you can imagine, George didn't know that there had been these feelings between these two. And he's thinking that he's doing this fabulous thing by hiring her a music master. And who is the music master but this guy that she'd been in love with as a teenager? So I thought that was lovely.
But did that not cause confusion in the marriage? Did that not because you could say it was a sign of infidelity?
We can't say there was confusion in the marriage. George didn't know for the longest time, because there was nothing. Remember, George also had
Mental
another
issues
woman that he cared about as well. There was this whole sort of separate lives before they came together as a couple. There was sort of this decision that I will stop seeing her, but you must stop seeing him.
Okay.
And it was sort of, so they made this pact, and she did take it upon herself to not be with Christian anymore. Now, by being with, I don't want to get into, you should read the book, for
yeah.
She made the decision to separate him from the palace. But he had introduced her to these themes of abolitionism and ending slavery and all of these things. That was a real wonderful partnership that they had as friends. And then she eventually brought George into that thinking. So, and also the other thing was, true story, when Christian died bankrupt and had nothing, the banks had taken the house, and he had married a soprano. Queen Charlotte paid for that funeral and all his debts. So there must have still been some residual feeling, for him when he passed away in 1781. So that's the secondary relationship for the book. And you'll have to read it to see how intense
it all
that
pans out. Yeah. King George, I mean, if we're going to go by the Bridgerton dramatization, which I loved, which I thought was very warm, she seemed like a very understanding woman because of his mental and emotional issues.
Yes.
We learnt in school, in history, about the madness of King George. We didn't learn about Charlotte Sophia.
No, in fact, when you watch the film, it's played by Helen Mirren. So you do think that the two of them are married, and she looked like that, but she was very understanding and was very, very helpful with regard to George. George had we think about that movie, so we only think about the madness as being one giant year-long episode. Right. He had been having episodes from the moment they got married. He probably was having them before they got married. But they became more and more intense over the years.
That was very, very clear in Bridgerton, because as soon as they did get married, George said, right, you go and live here. I'm going to go and live over here. And she didn't quite click that there was an issue with his mental and emotional health after marriage. It took a bit of time for her to get to understand that there were some issues there.
Well, she caught him in the middle of one of his episodes. And so then she had to be, they had to explain to her that on occasion, he has these episodes of forgetfulness, but this was more than that. I mean, he progressed to the fact that he was running up and down the halls naked and feeling up the various ladies in waiting and was mumbling, gibberish, and it scared her there for and so she tried to use some of the medicines that she had learned from she had a Jamaican, we can't call her a nanny actually, but there had been a maid in the household in Mecklenburg that she was close to. And she had picked up a few medicinal recipes from that woman. And by the way, I had to create the name for that woman because there was no, of course, there was no identification as to who she was. So I could not get any background on her. But that woman was very maternal. And so she applied some of those things she learned from in my book. The woman's name is Lena. She applied some of those medicinal recipes to George, which appeared to be helpful, but he just went down, 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 down until the big episode in his 60s.
Okay. And their children, you mentioned that there were 18 pregnancies, but 15 living children.
Yes.
So they had a good relationship. They must have.
Oh my goodness. I always, you have to laugh. You have to laugh about that. So I said, okay, so I said, to be colloquial, I said, George finds out he's married to a Black woman, and he's going to find out if any of that other stuff is true. So they, in fact, conceived the next king, King George IV, on that wedding night. Literally 9 months from wedding night came forth the next king of England. So as far as she was concerned, she had done her job. She gave England, and not only that, then a year after that came Prince Frederick. So there was an heir and a spare within the first 2 years of marriage. So she had done her duty, because that's all she was there for.
Yeah, but she provided the heir, she provided the spare, and another 13.
Oh my God, it went on and on. And then what was terrible about it all is that George didn't want any of his daughters to even marry. So, I mean, he was keeping them in the house. Some of them were, it was kind of sad. Some of them were 25, 28 years old before they ran off with equerries or it's like running off with the postman. Those women were looking to have some kind of relationship, and he was keeping his daughters from relationships, which was odd to me, and there is no explanation for that.
Okay.
Particularly given the fact that he had to be arranged into his own marriage, and why he would not allow his daughters to maybe find real love, or why Charlotte wasn't more forceful to say, George, we have to let these girls meet men. Let's try and introduce them to.
Because the daughters are going to birth the next generation. I know obviously they have sons, but it's the daughters. It's that, dare I say, pure lineage from George and Sophia, Charlotte Sophia, even though the sons would have gone on to have children.
Oh my God, the sons went on to have, listen, there were so many illegitimate births. There were so many, when they got to, listen, Queen Victoria became Queen Victoria because by the time it got down to looking for a son that had a legitimate child, they had to get down to, I mean, really, it was, they were with actresses, they were with this one, that one, and no marriages that would have resulted in legitimate children that could then reign. They had to go to the daughter of the fourth, son, and he was dead, but the daughter was, was alive. So that when William, who was the third son of Charlotte and George, when he passed, they had to really do a deep dive on, oh my God, who's going to reign next? And it was Victoria, who became one of the most popular and great female sovereigns in British history. Okay. Next to Queen Elizabeth, who just passed.
One of the things that I really do want to ask you is your thoughts on Bridgerton.
I have to be honest, because people ask me that all the time.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah, they do. Well, they ask me that all the time. I have to be honest. I think I did the entire show in one afternoon into the evening. I had a lot of fun with it because I think that it's one of those kind of shows where it's a lot of fun. It's sort of a primetime soap, and it's fluffy, and and everybody's beautiful, and I love the relationships. I particularly love the character that Adjoa plays, Lady Danbury.
Oh, yes.
I love her too. And she did the audiobook for this book, for the Queen Charlotte book. I enjoyed it. I also enjoyed the prequel on Queen Charlotte.
Yes.
my concern, of course, became when they announced that they were doing a prequel on Queen Charlotte. I had a deal at HBO to do my book.
Okay.
On Queen Charlotte, and so obviously they were not going to be able to exist in the universe at the same time.
Side by side, yeah.
So then we've backburnered my HBO version of it, and we'll see what I can't say now because I'm in the middle. There's a renegotiation now, so I can't say anything right now.
Okay.
Yeah. But I enjoyed it. Just to answer the question, I enjoyed it. I think it's fun. I think it's frothy. I think it's very cute. It'll make you go to your history books or to the internet to find out what really did happen.
Absolutely. Are we going to see any more adaptations of your books or any of your work on screen? We've talked about Days of Our Lives. We've talked about Roots. I mean, you've won Grammys for so much. I mean, are we going to see any more adaptations of your work?
We are. In fact, I'm in business right now with a film company in England for my adaptation of Little Richard. So that one is I'm in the process of that one. So that's early stages, and then there are two more that I just can't talk about right now.
Okay. Yeah. Tina, when you're next in the UK, let's have afternoon tea and talk about Queen Charlotte. It's obviously very, very sunny in LA right now because you are just.
Oh, am I? Oh, let me get. Okay, so let me do this, and that gets me sort of.
Oh, right.
If I just back up a little bit, it's very sunny. And I thought I was closing drapes. Yes, it is warm. So you're in cold London.
Oh, stop that.
74 degrees out here. Yeah.
Tina, it is 3 degrees here as I speak to you. 3 degrees.
Oh my God.
It's cold. And I'm only dressed like this because my radiator is on. I'm cold. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay.
That's why I'm never in London over winter. My birthday present to myself is I tend to come back on April 1st.
Yeah.
I have to come back sooner now because we are doing Shaka. We've got things that we have to do with that. And also I have another, so you'll know, I'll give you this much information. The play version of Charlotte. We are in readings. I'm going to invite you so that you can have a preview of the play.
Got to be there.
That we will be doing on Queen Charlotte. Yes.
Okay. Just before we wrap up, are you in conversation at all with Shonda Rhimes?
No.
Okay, no problem.
No, we don't have any. We kind of do the same thing. She does her projects. I do my project. We know each other. Yeah. But we're not in any talks. No.
Okay. Tina, when you come back to the UK, we've got to sit in a room together because there are a lot of pages in this book that we need to cover. A lot. Okay. And it seems like Charlotte had a life that was very up and down, was quite tense at times. I'm trying to envisage a Black queen at a time when she was reigning. There was an issue with her identity being kept under wraps at one point, wasn't there?
And why is it I keep saying to everything, the catchphrase for me is, why did it take 250 years for us to discover that there was a woman of color who was the consort to George III? Why did it take 250 years? Well, yes, there was hiding. She was hiding also, but also they were keeping that information from us. But keep in mind, they didn't have the cameras that could shoot from across the street.
Yeah.
If she was ever on the balcony waving, it looked like she was not a woman of color.
Yeah.
Some people in the palace knew, some didn't, and those that knew kept their mouths shut if they wanted to maintain, a relationship with the king. So yeah, there's a lot of subterfuge with that.
Yeah. So even though we see a dark woman here, clearly with hair that is of a mixed race woman, It
Yes.
seems like there was still a lot of whispering along the passages of the palace.
Well, but I really insisted when, I got with Jacaranda, I said, I would like to use the picture that Sir Alan Ramsay rendered of her where she looked authentically ethnic.
Yeah.
Before they rejected that painting and started to Angloize her, because the big paintings that you see in Buckingham and at the National Portrait Gallery, she's in the whiter hair.
Yeah, they don't look like this. They don't look like this. And even though
no, that they did not let that painting hang in the palace. No.
And even though it's a side view, this clearly is not a Caucasian woman. But listen, Tina, when you get to the UK, please, please, please promise me we got to have afternoon tea, and we need to get back into on a sofa, and we need to talk through this book because it's a piece of history that we need to talk about. And as Whoopi said, it's extraordinary and it's wonderful.
Thank you, Angie. Thank you. Tell your listeners and anyone else who you come across to just take a look at the book for entertainment, also for history.
Definitely. Tina Andrews is a writer, she's an actress, she's a director, she's a producer, she's done a multitude of things. Days of Our Lives, Roots, she's been on TV for us. I mean, she was a child actress as well. I'm so glad that you decided to pick up this project. Thank you so much for joining me on Angie's Book Club, ABC. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.